Today and tomorrow, I want to dip into the first world as seen just for a little bit. Now, normally I wouldn't bother with issues like this, but when they become so absolutely absurd, you just kind of have to say something. Like, you know what I mean? Like, normally you would ignore things that are dumb, but when something is so astronomically dumb, you can't ignore it. That's kind of what it is. Now, the character Apu Nahasapima Pedalon has been a staple of The Simpsons for what, 2.5 decades? Something like that. Apu has been a very long standing character, a beloved character, actually. Well, now it's been decided that the character can no longer exist because it's offensive. And it's offensive because a white person does the voice for the character. Of course, all kinds of ethnic minorities doing voices for white people is not considered offensive. In truth, neither one of them is offensive. They're just acting. That's what acting is, pretending to be something that you're not. Like, for example, the Netflix series Big Mouth. Basically, everybody on the show who does the voices for characters are people of color, and they are portraying mostly white people. That's not offensive. That's called voice acting. Okay. Well, the one of the producers of The Simpsons, Adi Shankar, shared the disheartening news that in order to avoid a dispute, in other words, not even necessarily agreeing with them, they're going to get rid of the character Apu Nahasapima Pedalon. Now, he's not going to leave the show by being killed or in any manner whatsoever. He's just going to simply disappear. In other words, his disappearance isn't even going to be acknowledged in order to protect the feelings of people who clearly have too many feelings. Now, this was largely spearheaded by an Indian comedian, Hari Kandalabu. He says in his speaking, he did a public piece on this. He said he's happy with his success, he's happy with his life, he's happy with the critical acclaim that he's received, but one thing just kind of keeps ruining it: the character Apu. Now, it would seem to me that if you really were happy with yourself, really were happy with your success, this wouldn't be bothering you at all, which leads me to believe this might be part of a larger issue. Now, essentially, his argument is he got a bunch of Indian comedians together, well-known individuals, Americans, of course, not actual Indian people living in India, but Indian Americans. And you got them together, and they're all offended by the stereotypes that have been put on them, which they somehow attribute to The Simpsons. As if it's The Simpsons' fault that there are particular stereotypes that are placed on Indian Americans. I mean, it doesn't make any sense, but okay. I mean, at most, you could claim that the character of The Simpsons is a manifestation of that racism, but to claim that The Simpsons is responsible for that is complete nonsense. Now, obviously, U.S. society, along with many Western liberal democratic societies, are racist. I mean, there's no denying that. But sometimes the accusations of racism do come to a point where they are, frankly, ridiculous. And yes, I am aware I am fucking a white male. Yes, I am well aware of that. That doesn't make me wrong. Because there are representations of Indian people in media that they don't like. I mean, it isn't even necessarily bad, they just don't like it. I mean, there are plenty of representations of white people in media that are bad. That doesn't offend me. Because there are bad people in the world who are white. Apu isn't even considered bad. He's a beloved character, which people love to quote. So he's not even being portrayed as a bad guy. But, you know, context really doesn't matter to SJWs like this. Material reality doesn't matter. So, you know, whatever their feelings are automatically makes something what it is. Now, there is real oppression directed towards Indians, and that is definitely absolutely true. Let's look for something that's a bit more material, something that, you know, actually exists. Let's say the relationship between the United States and India, where U.S. imperialism does to a large degree assist in the oppression of over 1 billion people inside of actual India due to the materially existing economic relationship and exploitation that exists as a result of imperialism. But is this something that these, frankly, liberal hipster comedians even care about? But this doesn't even enter into their radar. They don't even think about that. They consider and complain that they don't like Apu. But to mention the economic relationship which affects the lives of, a billion people inside of India, that's verboten. You're not allowed to talk about that. Why? Mainly because as people who live in the first world, brown skin or not, they are beneficiaries of imperialism. They are able to be paid higher than the value of their labor because they are in the first world and benefit from that exploitation. It's one of those things. Point out all the privileges except the first world privilege. Something that the Tumblrinas and the Twitterati just kind of don't like to ever mention. Like when you mention that to other Marxists, take something very small, a small form of oppression that they're complaining about, and compare it to a material existing thing like imperialism, which is actually much larger, and they suddenly get mad at you. So really, to these Indian comedians, there's real oppression in the world, real oppression that Indians and Indian Americans actually face. Perhaps maybe you should focus on those things instead of something that is completely nonsense and a complete non-issue, such as the Simpsons character, Apu. Thank you for watching. If you like this program, then please head over to my Patreon page and set up a monthly donation. It's your donations that keep this program running. Also, if you would like, please rate, comment, subscribe, and share in various social media.